Welcome to Connecting Greeks, a streaming comedy show and podcast designed to explore and enhance Greek culture around the world. Join hosts Angelo, Adi, and Foti as they bring you fun and interesting guests from all walks of Greek life. Grab a kafedaki and join us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Connecting Greeks podcast. You guys notice that every time I do the announcement, I forget the podcast that we're on. The Connecting Greeks podcast. I'm Ari. I am coming from you live from Washington, D.C. And all the way up in Boston is my co-host, Foti Stamos. How are you, Foti?
Yes, Ari. I'm doing well. I'm doing well up here in this frigid weather in Boston.
Yeah, I heard it's like everything shut down because it's like negative 20 or something.
Pretty much. It almost feels like where Angela is right now, out of space there.
I was going to say, speaking of frigid, let's introduce our other co-host, the one, the only Angela Tsarouchas. Hello, Angelo.
Frigid? Did you talk to my ex-wife? How did you guys get this information? Look, I wasn't frigid. It was just cold that night.
How are you, Angelo?
Good, guys. How's it going?
Excellent.
Good, guys, as always. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. Foti, give us a little bit about our special guest today.
Yes, Foti.
Absolutely. So I also want to acknowledge this is our first episode of 2022. So congratulations to a full year of Connecting Greeks for 2021. We had some great and interesting guests. We had some nice traction. The awareness is growing. So I wanted to also tip my hat off to all of us for all of our hard work and efforts to keep this podcast going.
Great.
And on that note, I wanted to introduce our guest, who's also a good friend of ours. It's been a while since we've seen each other, but I wanted to welcome to the program the executive director of the Hellenic Initiative, our good friend Peter Poulos, all the way from Athens, Greece. Peter, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure. I always thought about bringing you onto the show, considering, all the previous guests that we've had. And, the point of our show is to connect Greeks from all over the world who are doing interesting, amazing, and great projects to promote our culture. And what a better fit than to have you on the show with all of the efforts that you've done in the past and what you're doing today. So before we get into the what you're doing at the moment, could you tell us a little bit about your background and where you grew up and the journey that you actually took to get to the point that you are today?
Sure. I first of all, again, thanks for having me on the show. I'm a third generation Greek American. I grew up in New York, a little town out on Long Island. I was born in Brookhaven and grew up in a little town called East Patchogue. Not a lot of Greeks there, but we had a little Greek church in the next tiny town over called Blue Point, and that's the church where my my grandparents sort of founded that church in 1961. And so I my whole family was from the eastern part of Long Island. My mother was born in Southampton. My father was born in Brooklyn. My grandparents were all born in New York too. But all of my great grandparents left Greece in the 1890s and came to America from both my mom's side and my father's side, as they were saying, from Sparti, from the greater metropolitan Sparti area, as Angela was saying, and from Ythio. So I went to school in Washington, D.C., George Washington University, studied politics there, and I started taking Greek there because I didn't grow up speaking Greek. So I took Greek at Georgetown through the consortium of schools in Washington, and then went and spent a semester abroad in Athens. And then I really got hooked, on Athens and Greece, etc., because we were sort of Greek light, as a family. Then I left, I worked on Capitol Hill, worked in politics, moved to California, worked in politics there for years. Didn't really do much in the Greek community except with being part of my church. But then as I got older, I wanted to sort of start doing a bit more in the Greek community. And in fact, I met a guy named Peter Haikalis, and he invited me to come to a meeting of the Modern Greek Studies Foundation at San Francisco State University. And he said, just come. He said, I know you don't do anything in the Greek community. Come and hear about it. You don't have to just come to a board meeting. You don't have to say anything. Just there, just observe. I said, okay. So I went to the board meeting, which was at the Annunciation Cathedral at the church in San Francisco. I was listening in at the end of the board meeting. He said, and now I'd like to introduce Peter Poulos, who's agreed to chair our Greek Film Festival. What are you talking about? So I became the chair of the Greek Film Festival and flew to Athens and met with the folks at the Greek Film Center and got the films And we organized it all through my office. And all the ladies that were part of the committee said, "Oh, we'll raise money by, and we'll sell them at the church." And I said, "No, we're not doing that." I called Wells Fargo and AT&T, and they both sponsored the event. We sold out every night that first year. And I think now the San Francisco Film Festival, which is run by the super capable Cleon Skortis and Maria Nikolakaikis, that festival is in the 16th or 17th year, I think. So but I got the bug, and I started visiting Greece all the time. And so long story short, I decided in 2005 that I wanted to live in Greece. So I stuck my toe in there. I came here for 6 months, said, okay, I love it. Went back home, sold my house, packed up my dog, Spiros, and he and I flew to Athens in January of 2007. And in fact, tomorrow is my 15-year anniversary in Athens.
Oh, wow.
Cool. Amazing.
Yeah. So that's it. And then, I got involved with the Hellenic Initiative a few years after I was here. I've been with the Hellenic Initiative now for 9.5 years. I've been the executive director for the last 3.5 years. We've given out over $18 million in those years, funding programs that help people. So, because the whole mission of the organization was to sort of help people as a result of the suffering caused by the financial crisis. So, we feed people, clothe people, house people, pay for their medical expenses, these sorts of things. And then we support entrepreneurs. We run the country's largest paid internship program. We run one of the country's largest mentoring programs. We run an online mentorship program with a grant from the United States State Department and the support of the U.S. Embassy here in Athens that's wildly successful. So we do a lot. We affect the lives of thousands of people and in a positive way. And, we connect with Greeks in the diaspora. Our gala, which we just had in New York on December 4th, raised $2.1 million in one night. So that makes it, the biggest event in all the global Greek diaspora. And we're growing and we want to keep growing. And of course, we're so pleased, to have friends like you guys, because you've been so supportive of everything that we do, and been doing it a lot longer than we have. So thanks.
No, our pleasure. I mean, I think it's very vital for our generations to be able to have organizations like the Hellenic Initiative, because collectively we have so many resources. There's so many talented individuals that are out there making these connections, and only to give back and to grow and to become stronger is basically the message that we want to continue sending out through the platforms like our podcast, for sure.
And it's funny, Peter, you mentioned Blue Point. I actually did a show at that church community.
Are you kidding?
Blue Point. Yeah, I did. I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years ago. That's and I was smoking cigars with the priest. They're a really cool guy. And he goes, and I did it. Nice. It's way by Islip there, right? Blue Point.
Yeah, it's past Islip. It's like way past Islip.
Way past Islip. And you go there and I've done some stuff with the Hellenic Initiative because being a Canadian and I tour a lot and you get to meet people along the way that we know a lot of the same people. And I wanted to ask you, because more relevant now than ever, Peter. I mean, you guys do such amazing work, and collectively this is something we need, because if people realize that Greece has one of the smallest growing populations in Europe.
Yeah.
It's true. The birth rate is lower now. And with everything that's going on in the planet, with the pandemic and everything, how important is it now? And I think you guys have done a good job with it, because I've gotten into it with a few people where they're kind of like, well, what have the Greeks done in terms of what's been happening on the planet, what's happening? And not that I'm bringing up politics, but you look at America now where we're divided on many things, and you look at everything else. So I got into it with a guy who told me, because he said to me that, the Greeks, it's because I guess this guy was an activist and we were hanging out in Los Angeles, and he looked at me and he goes, "You represent the people that we hate." He looked at me because I don't look Greek. I look like, a guy named, Dave from Wisconsin. I never get the Greek thing. And then he went off on me. I go, hold on, wait a second. I said, wait a second here, I said. And I was in the room, and as a comic, I had to point it out. I said, in World War II, when France, Italy, and Spain were pointing out the Jews, we were hiding them in the Khorafia. I said in 1964, I said, when Dr. King walked across Selma, if you look to the right, the Archbishop of the Greek Church was standing right beside him. So I said, slow your roll. I said, before you go on, and I think it's the initiative, the Philotimo. I said, there's a lot of things that we do and you don't realize it. Yeah, yes, we're white, and yes, we assimilate more. But if you actually understood more of what we're doing, then you'd be more aware of the fact that our people were just got screwed as much as your people. So
That's exactly right. I mean, you think about the history of we are one of we're one of the world's great diasporas, because basically we've been kicked out of every country we've ever been in our entire lives. Yeah. I mean, and you think about Greeks and survival. There's we're sort of unrivaled, as an ethnic group, even since, think about it, Greece hadn't really been an independent nation since ancient times, so fast forward, to the 1800s to 1820s, and all of a sudden we're gaining our independence, from the Turks. But before that, we were controlled by the Gauls, by the Franks, by the Venetians, by the Romans, by everybody else, and yet we were able to to keep to hold on to our language, to keep our culture and our traditions, and then to think about the tragedies that happened to the Greek community in the 20th century, the Lausanne Treaty and the exchange of populations between Greece and Turkey, Greeks getting kicked out of Egypt by Nasser in the 1950s. I mean, Athens was a little tiny village, that all of a sudden became like a tent city. It became a tent city in the 1920s with, and you're talking about cosmopolitan Greeks who had to who they weren't some sort of rudimentary working class. They were cosmopolitan, educated people, who had to flee Asia Minor, Constantinople, Alexandria, Smyrna, other cities, and just live in tents, basically in squalor, in the middle of Athens, so the struggle is very real, and I think it's why too Greece and Greeks taught the world a lesson, and they're still teaching the world a lesson during the refugee crisis, because 2/3 of Athenians are refugees from somewhere else. They were refugees from Asia Minor, they were refugees from Egypt, so they know what it's like to be a refugee, and so where the rest of Europe was closing off its borders, to the refugees, or taking, we took 20 children, we took 100 children, Germany, and it's all over the newspapers. Greece is dealing, little islands like Mytilene, and Chios and Samos, absorbing thousands of people and doing it with a tremendous amount of respect and honor, and class, and actually not really asking for a lot in return. So now I'll get off my soapbox, but
I totally agree with you. And you see, the thing is, that's why even things like the initiative or even what we're doing, it's nice that we can pat ourselves on our backs and talk about achievements, but it's the awareness that you bring to people. And I always tell people there's a level of intelligence that's attached. They go, my mom's from Lesvo, and her cousins tell us that at the end they have a restaurant in Mytilene. If they got pots of soups, they go down to the porch where they have the tent set up, and they feed these people because they have Philotimo. And I said, and the guys tell me, well, what else? I go, hold on. What's the rest of Europe doing? The Bulgarians, everybody else has closed their borders off. So the Turks are transporting these people to Greece. It's a fact. It's documented. Nobody else wants them. You're leaving them there. The Greeks were going through their own issues economically and whatever else they're doing. And we still took the time to do this. And I think that's why we need, and I totally agree with you on this, Peter, that we need to show, and I think they realize it, that this little country is so fucking resilient that it's going to do this and continue to do it. So the work is always there. And I think I get a little emotional, and I'm willing to call them on it and say, hold on, Germany needed workers. They let them in. Hungary, all these other places. No, we're not taking you guys. North Macedonia, who are upset about the name. Who cares? It's not yours. And I said to one guy, because the guy says to me in Toronto, I'm Massey. Okay. I said to him, he goes, well, we're not happy about
it's interesting. I I had some friends good friends of mine, who not Greek, who live in the United States, and they'd started a nonprofit group helping refugees in Greece. And they were flying over here a few times a year, doing great stuff, like, buying like school supplies for kids and like helping in the refugee camps and like buying tents for people and doing all sorts of great things. But, they were complaining to me a bit about like, Greek NGOs and the Greek government and what the Greek government and what the Greek NGOs were actually doing for refugees in Greece. So I said, why don't you, next time you're in Athens, why don't you come with me and we're going to go visit Metadrasi, which is one of the organizations that we fund. Yep. And so I took them. It was 4 women, and we went and visited Metadrasi. And a woman named Katerina Downward, who's sort of the head of education there at Metadrasi, took them around. And Metadrasi Greece is sort of like they actually won the Hilton Humanitarian Award 3 years ago, which is the largest humanitarian prize in the world. They won a $2 million prize, and that ceremony actually took place in Los Angeles. I went to it. And basically, Metadrasi acts like a translation service for refugees in Greece, because you can imagine there's 60 languages that people are speaking in different dialects and whatnot. And it also acts as a service for undocumented minors, because, you have thousands of children, many of whom are like under 10 years old, who are here alone. So they came because their parents died, their parents drowned, their parents put them on a boat because they wanted them to have a better life, whatever it was. They end up in Greece and, they're preyed upon by, human traffickers, other people. And so Metadrasi tries to find these kids and put them in a loving environment, And so the Hellenic Initiative, together with Metadrasi, renovated a home in Mytilene on Lesbos, for these kids. And it sort of is like a transition point, but it's like it's a warm, safe, loving environment for kids to go before they sort of move on. And we just got a story from one of the kids who was there, who was Syrian, he's a young boy, and now he's actually studying in France at university, wow. And that's exactly what you want. But I took these women there to have a sort of a tour, of Metadrasi's offices in Athens. And, they walked into the room where there's 50 translators. They walked into another room, where there's a Greek teacher teaching a group of Syrian women how to speak Greek. Walked into another room where they're teaching men how to read the Greek alphabet. Another room where they're teaching people figuring it out, how to connect them with their relatives in other parts of Northern Europe. And then afterwards we sat and sort of had coffee and spoke to Laura Papa, who runs the organization, who's a saint. And when we left, my friend pulled me aside and she said, we had no idea. And I said, I know you had no idea. And that's why I wanted you to come see this place, because it's great what you're doing, but you also need to know, that Greek NGOs and the Greek state are doing 10 times more, than all of you are doing, So, we need more of that kind of education. A lot of times, what these sorts of good things, that are happening in Greece, the kind of work that the Hellenic Initiative is doing, helping organizations like that support, it doesn't end up, on the front page of the New York Times. That's not the story. People want to know about the bad stuff. They don't want to know about the good stuff, So there's a lot of good things happening here and a lot of people doing great stuff here in Greece, especially in the NGO world. And I think, for us as an organization, because we're a fundraising organization on a parallel track with fundraising, we're sort of trying to build trust in Greece as an institution and also in its institutions, and that's a tall order because, for years, people didn't trust Greece, and the Greek government. So, there were fires and you'd give money, and then the villages would never get rebuilt and all these things. So, we've spent a lot of time trying to build trust again, in Greece as a place where, you feel safe putting your money and it's going to be spent the right way.
No, I told when the guy said, Peter, let's do this podcast, and we're combining our efforts together. And that's why it's great to have a guest like you today. It's important because it's good to have these platforms, but we want to inform people in our base and the people what kind of work you're doing. And when Foti said, you were coming on as a guest, I thought this is great because I know what the initiative's doing. And we do focus on the accomplishments, but I totally agree with you, and I think the guys agree. People need to know information highway is so important, and if more people know what you just said now about, I remember in Australia we did a thing for the Atrophy, Feed the Children of Greece.
Yeah,
and I didn't know what it was about, and the guy was there, and we did a show with Katarina Vrana. This was in Melbourne and Sydney, so I was there. I headlined it. Katarina Vrana, George Zacharopoulos, George Kapaneris, Kostas Kilias, which I call him Gus the Gut, and myself. Kostas Kilias, Gus the Gut. He goes, "That's funny, mate." And we did this thing for the Atrophy to feed, and then the people in Greece told me that by you guys doing this, it raised awareness. By having you on our podcast raises this awareness, and that's what we need to let people know of the good work like these people are doing, like yourself and everybody else. And it's a matter of taking things, and it's like putting the breezes together, connecting them so people can understand what they're doing. And the negativity that's attached to it now, they can see that they're doing that.
Once Peter mentioned, that mission of building trust, I it just clicked in my head that you guys do have a tall order. It is something that is, I mean, if you're Greek, it's one thing, but just Greece's image on the world stage, if you're not really into politics, you're not really well-versed, well-read on everything, you just hear, Greece, the corruption caused them to collapse financially and blah, blah, blah. That's all we know. So it is a tall order, and it is amazing that you guys have accomplished everything that you have and are accomplishing everything you're accomplishing right now. And I think that's amazing. And I tip my hat off to you for the work that you have to put in, not just to do the fundraising and the helping and the organizing, but to also build that reputation back up. And because it's not easy. That is not an easy thing. So
it's not easy. I mean, we've got a great team. A lot of the people are Artemis Kohas and Xeni Kouveli, who handles our social media. I mean, when I met Xeni Kouveli at a party here in Athens, years ago, and she's one of Greece's number one fashion bloggers. And I'm like, listen, you're cool and we're not, and I need you to help make us cool, And so, we went from 0 followers on Instagram to almost 20,000. Wow. I mean, she's done an amazing job for us. And now, she's working with a young woman here in Greece, that does search engine optimization. So when anybody searches in a browser, for charitable work in Greece or helping Greeks, or giving back in Greece, or helping children, whatever it is, the Hellenic Initiative's name comes up first. So
very important.
We're raising most of our money online now. We ran a campaign for the wildfires this summer. We were hoping to raise $50,000, and we raised $720,000. From 4,200 different donors from 47 countries around the world. I mean, it's just incredible, when you get a contribution from a Greek person in Singapore, and then you get 10 more from Greek people in Singapore, or from Greeks in Uruguay. We had a young woman reach out to us, Markela Stamatiu from Buenos Aires, and asked if I would be on a show with the Greek community in Buenos Aires, which I did. You kind of don't, you always knew that, we're like Katsarides and we've sort of infested the planet, but you'd never realize how much so. I mean, we're everywhere,
everywhere.
And the Greeks, and they care, and so okay, we all love our religion and we all love our church and all that stuff. But the Hellenic Initiative offers people a way to get in touch with the Patrida through education, through culture, through volunteerism, through philanthropy, through, I think, ways that, 5th, 6th generation Greeks in the diaspora, or just Philhellenes, who want to help, want to feel connected. We give them that bridge to we've created a bridge for them to get connected to the country.
That's amazing. That really is amazing. We're very proud people. And when I hear these types of stories, and I meet people such as yourself, it makes me understand why I'm so proud of my culture. Because, it really is truly amazing what we're doing and everything. Angela, I didn't mean to cut you off.
We're so lucky. Think about other ethnic groups. We are so lucky to be a part of the Greek community. I mean, we just are. You know, like, I mean, my Italian friends, like, they're like, we don't have anything like that. Like, we don't do a big gala in New York. Like, we don't know. I mean, you could do something like in the United States, in New York, I'll give an example. You can probably do something almost every night of the week in the Greek community in New York.
Yeah.
There's something going on. There's some event. There's some charitable event. There's some like party happening. There's some Glendy going on. There's something going on like almost every night of the week. You don't get that in a lot of other cultures, you know, a lot of other ethnic. Like we have that. Like my Italian friends meet each other. Like my Jewish, nobody's like, oh, what village is your family from? Like, you know, we immediately do this whole Greek geography thing, like with each other. You know,
which we did before we started recording.
Yeah, you know, Peter, I've had this out with a few people. You know, being in Hollywood, I was at a friend's house, I can't say who, and they're talking around. He goes, oh, yeah, you got Angelo here, Greek this and Greek that. I go, hey, Malaka, unlike you, I'm not embarrassed of my Greek culture. So I'm going to talk about it when people tell me. I tell them where to go eat. I used to be a travel agent in another life. I tell them, you got to go here. I always tell people, you got to go to Greece once in your life. If you haven't lived as a human being until you've gone to Greece once in your life. And you know what? When they go, you know what they always tell me? Why didn't we go before? You're exactly. Welcome. You're welcome. So I get into it because the guy goes, like, one of my friend, even my friend, okay, right, my best friend Russell Peters, one of the biggest comics in the world, goes, this guy, Greek this, Greek that. Guess what? They love it. They love it. And he goes, you know, I got to tell you, I admire the fact that you don't care what people say to you. You're like, look, tell me I'm wrong. You're going to tell me about Greek food. You're going to tell me about this Greek culture. I'm not saying it's the beginning or the end of the world. But I'll tell you what, though. I said, why wouldn't I talk it up? Because we're proud of it. And it's good.
We're proud of it.
Good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I used to tell people, I always stay at the end of a film, like in a movie theater, you know, to see if there's any Greek names in the credits. You know? And I know, like, every Greek I talk to does the same thing.
Yes, 100%. We're all, no matter, no matter where we're from, no matter what our personal backgrounds are, rich, poor, you know, tall, short, whatever it is, the fact that we're Greek, we have so much similarities just for the fact that we are Greek. And that is such an amazing thing to be part of. As you said, we're lucky to be Greek and to be part of this Greek community. And we're also lucky to have gentlemen such as yourself, Peter, who do these things that will help progress, you know, this culture and the special people that are part of our culture. And, you know, even us with the podcast and stuff that we do. If you're Greek, you know, whatever you could do to promote this culture, do it. I know most of them do anyway. You can't stop them, but it's such a great thing. And, you know, I'm surrounded by Greeks all day, every day, and still we have these types of podcasts, and I'm still fascinated. Like some of the numbers you just pulled out for what Hellenic Initiative has done. Is like I'm very, very well aware of the Hellenic Initiative, and I still didn't know how much you guys are doing. So yeah, it's
look, I get into it, guys. I was on the ship.
No, we have listen.
Sure, that's what one thing. They put out something, Peter, on the sign. It says Greek Suzukakia. All right. When I look at it, it's spanakopita. So I called the chef over. I called the chef over from Sri Lanka. I go, come here. I go, what's this? He goes, Suzukakia. Really? Do you know what Suzukakia are? He goes, that's Suzukakia. No, buddy. That's spanakopita. Take the sign and change it. I'm not changing it. I go, you're from Sri Lanka? So I go, how did you know? I know. And he goes, how do you know about this? I go, I'm Greek. He goes, you don't look Greek. I go, change the sign. You're embarrassing my people. It's an insult. And the manager came over and he looked at me and he goes, is there a problem here? I go, you're damn right there's a problem. You can't call Spanakopita Suzukakia. Alexeto. And I started yelling at him in Greek. Not to Alexis.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Sorry, Peter, I cut you off.
Oh my God, that is so funny.
Well,
I was in my, you know, I went to my my great grandfather's village, which is outside of Monovasia. It's called Rihia, and there's a museum there.
I've been to Rihia.
And I went to the museum and Rihia.
I've been there. My ex-wife's Federica from there. She's from Metamorphosis, and there's Asopos. and Richia and Plitra. I know all that area, man. I used to be married to it.
What's her last name?
Lagis.
Oh, Lagis is a family name of mine.
Oh,
yeah.
Vrica Mesigenia, Tora.
Another Greek strain right there.
Yes.
Because there's Langis in Ottawa, Canada, from Richia, Richiotes, and then my ex-brother-in-law is from Plitra, and my ex-wife's family's from Monavasia, Catavothra, and then the other ones, and there's other place, is it Yeraka, the port? Yeraka. That's where Telly Savalas is from.
Yeraka is right there, yeah.
Right there.
My mother's maiden name is Drivas.
Drivas. Okay, sure.
And
we have them in Canada. I know them.
Yeah, and my great grandmother was Antonia Lagi.
Whoa.
Jeez.
Connecting Greeks.
Peter, we may have been cousins at one point.
Hello. I mean, you never know. But anyway, I went to the museum, Richia, and it wasn't open, but there was a number, and I called this woman, and she's like, I'll come right over. So she came over, she opened it up, and there's all these photographs in there, and I'm like, and there's a sort of a little donor wall, and I'm like, oh, there's my Yaya's name, it has her name, Vasiliki Drivas, it's like up on the thing. And then I see there's a photograph of my papu and my brother when he's a little boy, he's like, 3 years old, and they're playing cards, like they're sitting at a card table and they're playing cards at like my grandparents' house, like out on the end of Long Island in a little town called Santa Mauritius. And it's my grandfather and my brother. And under the photograph, it has two different names. It has my uncle, Dean Coloris, and his son's name. And I'm like, so I called the woman over and I said, listen, I know who Dean Coloris and his son is. That's not who's in this photograph. The photograph is actually my grandfather and my brother. She's like, Taxi, then Pirazi. I'm like, oh, Pirazi. You need to change it.
So classic.
It's completely.
You know what?
Only Greeks
only Greeks use this phrase.
My had obviously sent the photograph, and they got it wrong, but I was like, listen, I want you to change. She's like, oh, I was like, okay, here's Ekoto, change the name to my papu's name and my brother's name, please.
Oh,
right.
I haven't gone back yet.
I was going to say.
Yeah, you have to check. You have to double check.
Follow up.
Yeah, but what do Greeks say? It's like when I went to the taverna in Paros. La problem της μάσκες, όχι, εμείς δεν έχουμε COVID, αυτοί έχουν COVID. Εγώ δεν έχει COVID, αλλά κάτσε εδώ. So my wife goes, what did he say? I go, those other tavernas have COVID, but not Yanni. His taverna doesn't have COVID. Εμείς δεν πάμε εδώ. Ευχαριστώ που μου το είπατε. He told us there's no COVID, so we ain't there.
You know what else? You know what else is so great about being Greek is that we could shift gears from talking about how awesome Greeks are, and then completely and utterly just
make fun of ourselves, all in the same breath, which I think is the best. Yeah. I love it. Oh my God, exactly.
Well, Peter, we know that you're up against time, and I know that you have another meeting coming up, but this is great. I wanted to personally thank you for coming on the show and talking to us about the Hellenic Initiative and sharing stories with us. We definitely want you to come back at some point sooner than later. For sure. Is there any information you want to give to our audience as far as learning more about the Hellenic Initiative? Any web addresses, social media handles that maybe you want to make us aware of?
Sure. I also just want to say, we have the Hellenic Initiative. We have 33 board members, from around the world. Each one of those board members, when you join the Hellenic Initiative's board, you make an initial gift of $100,000, and then our board members have to make annual gifts of $25,000, or if you're on our executive committee, $50,000. And all of that money pays for the operating expenses of the Hellenic Initiative, so that the monies we raise can go directly, towards all the charitable work and all the entrepreneurs that we support in Greece. So like a big shout out, to our board members, for doing all of that. And you can read all about our work on our website, which is www.thehellenicinitiative.org. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on LinkedIn. It's all the Hellenic Initiative. And you can also follow all of our affiliated chapters. So THI Australia, THI Canada, and now THI UK. We just got our charity status in the UK. So,
wow.
And we do a big gala there every year as well. Last year's gala in the UK was at the Dorchester, and that raised $250,000. So it's a great event.
Amazing. Well, Peter, we want to thank you again for taking the time. We know you're in a bit of a rush. We'll also share all the information about the THI in the video and podcast notes. And we just want to say, amazing work. Continue, please. Come back and hang out with us again. We have so much more to talk about. Whenever you have any updates, anything going on, just feel free to connect with us. We thank you so much. I want to also thank you. And I also want to thank Foti and always Angelo. And I want to thank.
Did you notice, Ari, that Carlos Stamos Poulos? You guys have easy Greek names. So Tsarouchas.
Yeah, but
I'm the only one who sounds like a disease in this group here.
Wait. First of all, Aristides, if you say in American, Aristides, it sounds like a disease right off the bat. You have a bad case of Aristides. And my actual name is Carlo Geropoulos, and I grew up in
my last name was Poulimonakos.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Only Foti had the easy name.
Mine is still Stamos.
Hey, Peter, you got to admit, though, Forti's hair looks really good, huh? We've noticed.
It looks really good, man.
His hair is really looking good. I mean,
I'm telling you, Forti's aging backwards. It's a little disturbing.
It's the Greek
whoever you're
wine that he
paying to
drinks.
fix your hair is doing a good job, buddy. Just want to let you know your money's going good.
I write it off with the company expense.
Bravo, Foti. Well, thank you guys again. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Foti. Thank you, Angelo. Thank you all out there for watching and listening.
Ari, wait, just a belated Chroniopola to you for your name day on September 13th.
The first person in Greek history that was
there you go, Ari, Chroniopola.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that very much. Thanks, everybody out there, for watching and listening. Peter, once again, thank you. We will see you guys next time. Stay well, be safe, and we're out. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.